I never did learn those manners.
Huh? One bad day. I knew there was a joke under that hood, but I never saw this punchline coming.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. And I'm here to talk about one of my all-time favorite Batman comics turned into an interactive animated movie. I'm talking, of course, about Batman: A Death in the Family. I can remember seeing the ads for this and thinking, wow, what a cheap cash grab, before then immediately grabbing my cash and pre-ordering it. For those of you who are unaware, this movie repurposes a lot of footage from Batman Under the Red Hood. It uses a lot of the same animation, and even a lot of the same original audio tracks. So in a lot of ways, it would almost seem like this was a re-release of that classic Batman movie. But it's really not. It's actually something else entirely. Batman: A Death in the Family uses Batman Under the Red Hood as a backdrop for its choose-your-own-adventure story. This movie is like playing advanced Mad Libs with real-life consequences. It's a multiple-choice feature that allows the viewer to change the story they're watching as that story's progressing. And it takes some real interesting twists and turns depending on the choices that are made, both going into more depth with the story at hand, and also sinking deeper into the overall lore of Batman, once again depending on the choices that are made. Watching this movie, you're not just a watcher, you're not just part of the audience, you're the player, you are the decision maker.
I'm the decider.
And you don't just get to change what happens, you get to change what will happen. Every choice that the player makes ultimately chooses who Jason becomes. And I'm not just talking about in terms of morality. Like, we're not just changing if Batman's sidekick becomes a hero or a villain. We're changing what mantle he chooses, what name he goes by, what he looks like, what he does, and why he does it. Throughout 7 potential endings, we're shown several potential aliases for the former Boy Wonder to go by. From becoming Red Hood, to taking on the role of Red Robin, to, even bizarrely enough, becoming Hush. Almost anything is possible. The sky's the limit. Throughout the various different events, we're shown the likes of Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, Superman, Tim Drake, Joker, Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, Damian, the list goes on and on. In one story, Bruce is telling his side of events to the mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent. In another, Jason is talked out of his villainous ways after meeting Tim Drake for the first time. And then in another story, Red Hood dukes it out with the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. You really never know who's going to show up from one minute to the next and what their place in the story is. If you were looking for an unpredictable Batman movie, this is the one for you. Even when taking the other characters out of the equation, this movie and its alternate events makes references to the larger world of Batman all throughout, including, but not limited to, several references of The Killing Joke. Some of that book's most iconic lines are spoken. Joker tells the joke that he tells to Batman in it, and utters the phrase "one bad day" to himself a couple times. And it is made painfully clear that it was the Joker who put Barbara in her wheelchair in this continuity as well. The story is consistently inconsistent, so it never gets too repetitive. Each new option is not only a new ending, but a new beginning to a whole new adventure. More importantly, despite the fact that this movie is trying to keep up with the viewer, and it's constantly changing its own story, the narratives mostly feel very natural. I mean, there's definitely one or two that seem a little bit out there, they're a little bit suspect, but I think they're all equally likely conclusions given the events of the plot. I gotta say, it's pretty surprising just how much comes full circle when you're given the power to make a square. The choices you make in this game not only change the narrative, but also change the narrator. Half the stories are narrated by Bruce. The other half of those stories are narrated by Jason. Choosing one option over the other doesn't just change the ending, it changes everything that leads up to that ending as well. This movie is basically the Batman Telltale games, but on a time limit. I think the interactive part of this feature is really poetic. Considering that when A Death in the Family comic was being made, those in charge literally had a poll for readers to decide if Jason lived or died, it seems entirely appropriate that players can now decide that same outcome, as well as what comes next. It's also not only Jason that you get to save or slaughter. The player's decision will greatly affect other characters in the story as well, including the fate of some of the friends and foes of the Batman family. Overall, after playing through this with a couple friends and going through all the endings, I'm more than a little bit ashamed that I called this a low-effort cash grab, because there was clearly a whole lot of heart and effort put into this. Yes, they did use footage from Batman Under the Red Hood, but several scenes were entirely reanimated, also that they can serve the narrative in different ways. Animation was also repurposed from other Batman movies as well, but a bunch of scenes were animated exclusively for this movie. Yes, the voice cast returns in scenes that were already shown in Under the Red Hood, but they also came back to record lines for other scenes that were made only for this movie. Almost all of Under the Red Hood's voice actors come back, with the exception of Jensen Ackles. This interactive game adds a ton of narratives and characters that weren't present in that original movie. Yes, this Batman endeavor may have recycled footage, but this isn't an old movie with a new title. Looking back on it now, everything that was done seems effortful and with purpose. They took something that already existed and twisted and tampered with it to make it their own, and make it something brand new and distinct from the original. And in a lot of ways, I like to think that that's what I do on this channel with the things that I review. Now look, I'm not saying that this is a faithful or even a good adaptation of the comic book of the same name. It's not, but it's really not meant to be. It's taking that original story, but doing its own thing with it several times over. That comic really just serves as the blueprint for this movie, and every addition that was done to it makes it uniquely its own. And all of that is really just the backdrop for this Who Wants to Be a Millionaire's Ward game. And while these two stories sharing the same name have little similarities, they are alike in one major way. Batman: A Death in the Family is one of my all-time favorite comic books. And Batman: A Death in the Family is one of my all-time favorite interactive movies.
Strike that. Reverse it. This way, please.
I think it's great for what it is. The one thing that kind of sucks about this is that in order to experience this movie in all its glory, you would have to go out and buy the Blu-ray. The movie is available on HBO Max, but HBO Max doesn't have its interactive version available. And instead, it plays through the movie on one path, and it's the most boring, straightforward, roll the credits path of them all. It basically just plays out Batman Under the Red Hood in record time. You wind up with a much more condensed and shittier version of one of the greatest Batman movies ever made. That is what is available to you on HBO Max. So if you happen to stumble upon this entry on that app, not necessarily worth your time. I would, however, suggest tracking this down and getting a copy yourself. But I would only suggest that if you'd already checked out and familiarized yourself with Batman Under the Red Hood. Because otherwise, this one is going to spoil that one for you. I think this is a fun little game to play with your geeky friends. Or, more accurately, to be alone and play with your geeky self. I think most of the narratives in the movie are fairly entertaining. So if you're a major Batman nerd who marks out to fan service, I couldn't recommend this movie enough. With all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
2 thumbs up.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
Can't wait to return the favor to them both.